If you take the mind to be you, its suffering is your suffering. And it will suffer. It does suffer, right? It doesn't take much to disturb the mind. You know, if you think about it, anything that you resist or reject, anything that you push away, anything that you take to be wrong, anything that you take to be a mistake, anything that you can't allow to be as it is, you give the power to disturb you. And if you're going to be brutally honest about it, you've given a lot of shit the power to disturb you, haven't you? Yeah. The weather, all other human beings, right? Yourself, right? Your past, your future, the news. Yeah. You know, there's an endless list of the things we've given the power to disturb us. And so if we're really paying attention to the mental activity, you'll be paying attention to a disturbed situation, a mental disturbance, you know, that's occurring all the time. And the way the mind works, you know, in terms of the way it relates to other human beings and other circumstances, you know, it considers circumstances and other human beings to be the cause of our suffering. And therefore, to end suffering in the ordinary way that people think, therefore, to end suffering is to kill off the source of the suffering, which is other people. Right? You can kill them off physically or you can kill them psychologically, right? If it's a family situation, it's a psychological murder. What did Gandhi say? There was a quote that Gandhi said about, how do you deal with your enemies? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? According to that, this is what Gandhi said, according to that, if you follow that approach to dealing with other human beings, the whole world will be blind and deaf soon. It won't take you long, right, to do that, right? Context is the space that you are. It's an energy field. It's a space that you are, and when you're in that space, what you see is different. When you're in the space of being relaxed and calm and peaceful, right, and connected with life, right, not resisting it, right, when you're flowing, right, when you're in that space, how you see life is different. That most of the people walking around on this planet don't hear the chirp of the birds in the morning. They're on their way to work, right? So one of the things that happens as you continue to practice meditation and the mind starts to calm down is you begin to experience life. You begin to experience the world. You begin to experience all the little things that are happening all the time that are delightful to witness, right? That were there all along, but you weren't paying any attention to any of that stuff because you were busy. You were busy. You were busy thinking, and you were busy planning, and you were busy fixing, and you were busy changing, and you were busy controlling. So that's the way. It's not a way of being. That's a way of thinking. That's a way of the mind. That's a mental state. And it's like I said earlier when I was quoting from that book, you know, that most of us, when we're in a mental state, don't know we're in a mental state. If you get pissed off and you're really being run by the energy of the anger, do you know that? Hell no. You're busy paying attention to the cause of your anger, trying to fight with that or control that, right? That's because you're in a complete survival mode. And even if the person that pissed you off is the person in life that you're closest to, they're not that person when you're pissed off. They move into being that which is threatening me, not the person that I love. It's that which is threatening me. And you go into this altered state. You go into this altered state. right? In which, in this altered state, all you're doing is looking to come up with the most powerful thing that you can say or do, right? To do damage and to cause pain to the source of your suffering. The mind is a comparing operation all the time. It's comparing yesterday to today and tomorrow, you know? It's comparing yourself to everybody all the time, isn't it? I'm not saying that the relationship has to be some pie in the sky relationship. But what I'm saying is, the bottom line is, are you putting up with it? Or are you totally committed to it, invested in it, right? Like that. If you're totally committed to a relationship and you're invested in it, then the first thing you want to do, especially if it's somebody you're married to, right, is get on the same page. If you're not on the same page, you're destined to end up with a lawyer. I mean, just look at it. If you're not on the same page, right, it means that you're different. You're being different with each other all the time, questioning the other person. And please understand that what I'm talking about here is that if you're identified with your mind, then survival is much more important than love. Survival is much more important than well-being. Survival is much more important than, you know, the relationship, the marriage, all of that stuff. Because as far as the mind's concerned, that's all there is survival. There is nothing in the program called the mind that's been designed for well-being. Let me say that again. There's nothing in the program of the mind that's been designed for well-being. There is something in the mind that's been designed for gratification, but gratification is not well-being. It's just getting what you want. Because the survival of the organism trumps everything. You know? Survival of the personality, according to the way the program is designed, survival of the personality is equal to the personality's well-being, although that's not true. But that's the way the program is designed. You know, in other words, if you're in control, if the ultimate form of survival and dealing with the threats that exist in your way of being happy, that's how it gets processed. In your way of being happy are the people or the threats that exist. The ultimate form of that is to just keep getting more and more control over more and more of the environment, right? Yeah. And you can get enough control over the environment that you could be the most powerful person on the planet and still be miserable. The evidence of that is very available every day if you watch the news. One of the ways that I see that is helpful to talk about this is to say that a movie metaphor can be helpful. Okay? In the game of life, when you see life from the view of the truth, life appears to be a game that we're all playing. And in this game of life that we're all playing, what doesn't exist is more important than what does exist, right? If you're pursuing happiness, right, the pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of getting what you want, right? And if it's the pursuit of getting what you want, obviously you don't have it. So what's more important is what doesn't exist than what does exist, okay? In the teachings, in the truth, what is important, which is not a game, it's the truth, right? In the truth, what's important is that what does exist is more important than what doesn't exist. It's the opposite. And because it's the opposite, it makes it that much more challenging, because human beings are hypnotized into the game. And when human beings are hypnotized into the game, the conditioning is the hypnosis. And when you're conditioned to be in this game, when you're conditioned to see the world from this view that what doesn't exist is more important than what does exist, right? Then your life becomes a process in which you're constantly using your behavior and your energy and your activities to get from where you are to another place, to get what it doesn't exist so that you have that, without ever noticing that every time you get the prize, it's not the prize as soon as you get it. The prize is now something else, because now that you got the prize, it's what does exist, and that's not as important as what doesn't exist. So as soon as you get the prize, you start experiencing the fact that this is not fulfilling because it's what exists. And it's what doesn't exist that is interesting to me. That's what I have to get. So it isn't long before I start looking again to see, okay, what else doesn't exist? And I'll start chasing that. That's a human life. That's a whole human life, beginning to end right there, whole human life. So if you use the metaphor of being in a movie, right, what makes movies work? If you went to the movies and you went and sat in the movies and the lights went out and the movie started, and when the lights went out and the movie started, you actually experienced being in the movie instead of watching a movie, would you be going to the movies a lot? So one metaphor that we could use, or one analogy that we could use, is to say that all of us who take ourselves to be in this experience, in this situation that we're in right now, right? Without our realizing it, we're in a movie, and we don't know we're in a movie, right? And because we're in a movie and we don't know we're in the movie, it's like being in the movie theater and the lights go out and the movie starts, right? And you're in the movie. Now, once you're in the movie and you're suffering in the movie, right? How do you solve the suffering in the movie? Yeah, but you're in the movie and you don't know you're in the movie. So that's not an option. You see? Same as this. Same as this. You're in this movie and you don't know you're in a movie. You think this is real, right? So in this movie that you think is real, when things happen that disturb you or upset you, how do you resolve that suffering? What's the source of the suffering in the movie? The source of suffering in the movie is what's happening, isn't it? Yeah. So if you're watching a movie, in the movie, what are the people in the movie doing to deal with the suffering they're experiencing? What's the cause of the suffering in the movie? You're watching a movie. When you're watching a movie, the people in the movie are suffering, right? Yeah. And what's the source of the suffering in the movie that they are dealing with? The movie's about that. The movie's about what they're doing to solve the suffering in the movie, isn't it? That's what you're watching, the drama. Yeah. So what's the source of the suffering in the movie?
They can't achieve what they want.
Huh? The source of suffering in the movie is what's happening in the movie that the people in the movie don't want to be happening, that's causing them to suffer, right? So what do? They try and change what's happening, don't they? Yes. Right? That's the way the movie works, right? So you can... So if you go to the movies and you sit in the movies and the lights go out and you think you're in the movie, right? Then in the movie, when you're suffering, you will attempt to control or change what's happening in the movie that's causing you to suffer, wouldn't you? Yeah. So if that's the way the movies worked, people wouldn't be going to the movies much, right? Because it would be too painful. It would be too much suffering, right? But that's not the way it is. We go to the movie for entertainment, right? What allows the movie to work?
We know it's a movie.
Yeah, you know you're not in the movie, right? Yeah. So, but it's interesting. You know you're not in the movie, but we turn the lights down, right? And we use the fact that your vision is a very strong interpretation of reality, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with the lights down, you will lose the idea that it's just a movie, just enough to be excited by what you're looking at. But if you thought it was really happening, you'd get up and run out of the movie theater, right? Sure. So it's an illusion, isn't it? Isn't the movies an illusion? We turn the lights down, so you're looking at the movie, and you can let go of your orientation to reality just enough to identify enough with what's going on the screen, right, for it to have an effect on you, right? So you experience excitement if it's an adventure movie, you experience fear if it's a horror movie, right? You experience conflict if it's about relationships, right? And so you can get involved with the movie just enough to experience it, just enough to experience the effect of the movie without it being actually real, okay? And you maintain that when you're in the movie theater. You don't have to keep telling yourself this is not real, right? You don't have to keep telling yourself. You maintain that, right? So you have this context called being in the movies, right? And the context determines how things occur, right? So the context of being in the movies determines that what's happening on the screen occurs to you as interesting, exciting, affecting your emotions, right? But while all that's occurring, you're still grounded in that it's not real. And that's what allows the movie to work, isn't it? Yeah. So now look at that in relationship to your life. Right now, you think you're in the movie. That's why it happens the way it happens, and that's why the way you relate to what's happening in your life is you try and control it and change it, don't you? Just like the characters on the screen, okay? But what allows the audience not to suffer the reality of what's happening on the screen is they never lose touch with the fact that it's just a movie and it's not real, okay? That's exactly what we're doing when you learn about the teachings. The teachings are telling you, right, maybe for the first time in your life that you've ever heard it, right, that everything you take to be real isn't real. And because you thought it was, you suffered, just like in the movies, right? But in the movies, it works because you can keep yourself grounded consistently in the idea that the movie isn't real. But in this life where you take yourself to be in the movie, right, you're not grounded in the idea that it's not real, are you? No. No. And when you practice meditation, right, you're stepping outside of the movie theater for brief moments. The movie theater is the mind. That's where the movie's playing, isn't it? Yeah, that's where the world shows up. That's where your life is happening, right? And that's where the circumstances are occurring, right? And if you don't know about the idea that that's not real, you'll try and solve the problems in your mind. You'll try and solve the problems by controlling what's happening, by getting rid of what you consider to be the source of the suffering, right? If somebody trying to hurt you, you stop them, you control them, you kill them, right? Like that. Right? So in the practice of meditation, we're practicing brief moments away from identifying with the movie, right? And once you're away from the movie, even though you only have a brief moment where you're experiencing being away from the movie, that brief moment is enough to let you experience directly and non-conceptually that the movie's not real, isn't it? Okay? So if you keep coming back to this, right, you're dehypnotizing yourself from being in the movie by practicing meditation. You're gradually dehypnotizing yourself a little bit at a time, right? So that you have more instances in your life when you're in the movie to notice, oh, it's just a movie, okay? And if you have enough practice and if you understand the teaching sufficiently and you have enough practice, even the worst things that could happen in the movie don't have an effect on you. Even the worst thing that can happen in the movie, right? How many of you saw the movie Apocalypse Now? Very popular movie, right? I've seen it many times, right? It's a good movie, right? The most horrible things that can happen to humanity happen in that movie. You see people being beheaded, right? It's like terrifying shit happens in that movie, right? But we're attracted to it. We're attracted to it. Why? We're attracted to it because we get to experience horrible things without them having the effect on us they would have if they were really happening. That's called entertainment. Right? But that's the truth. That's the way it is, right? So if this is a movie, and in this movie things are happening, and when they happen you don't know it's a movie, you'll try and control what's happening in the movie to stop the suffering, won't you? Yeah. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It doesn't work because the source of the suffering isn't what's happening. The source of the suffering is you think it's real. Just like the movie, right? Instead of trying to fix what's wrong in the world, instead of trying to control what seems to be hurting you in the world, just wake up and realize it's a dream. And that solves the whole thing at once. Solves the whole thing at once. Instead of going from one situation to the next, like you do in your life, which is the movie, right? Instead of going solving one situation to the next, the way we do in life, right? You solve the whole thing in one fell swoop by just seeing none of it's real. Once you see none of it's real, the effect on you starts to diminish and disappear, doesn't it? Just like a dream. When you wake up from a nightmare, as terrified as you may have been in the dream, when you wake up, you realize that never happened. And that's just as true about this movie you're in. This never happened. Right? If I say something like that, your mind will reject it. It'll reject it right away. What do you mean this never happened? Of course this happened, right? Why? Because you're hypnotized to be in the movie. That's why it happened. Yeah? If you're sitting in a movie theater looking at the movie on the screen, right, do you have any trouble understanding that that never happened? No, that's not a problem. You understand these people are just making believe. That shit never happened. It's all props. It's all computerized bullshit, right? But in this movie, no, that's not like that. In this movie, this is just really happening, right? But in this movie, the same way in that movie, your mind is creating the movie the same way as the props and the actors created the movie on the screen. That's why in these teachings, what we say is the only thing you have to deal with to determine the quality of your life is your relationship to the movie, which is your mind. Right? But because you're hypnotized, you keep going into the movie and being in the movie. And when you're in the movie, you forget about the fact that it's just a movie, and you fall back into suffering again and trying to control the suffering by controlling the circumstances in the movie. Do you see how the metaphor works? Yeah. That's the teaching, whether you talk about it from a Christian's perspective or you talk about it from the Eastern teachings perspective, it's the bottom line is the same. Right? So you want to be clear enough about that to understand, right, that you have to practice experiencing not being in the movie as often as possible so you can turn the tide. So you can stop trying to control the suffering in the movie, but instead understand that as soon as you see that it's not real, the suffering stops. How can you suffer from something that's not happening? It's not possible. Okay? And it can happen like that. Something can seem real and be the actual source of your suffering, but as soon as you see it from the clarity of awareness itself, the suffering stops just like that because it's not real. Death is not real. But you're looking at it from inside the movie, so it seems as if death is real, but even you who's grieving the death is in the movie. It's just happening in terms of what's appearing. It's appearances. You don't have any difficulty understanding when you're in the movies that you're looking at an appearance, do you? No, but you have a lot of difficulty understanding that this is just an appearance. Yeah, because you've been hypnotized. Hypnotism is pretty strong. And not only have you been hypnotized, but we're sharing the hypnotic state, right? So I can verify with you, isn't what I'm seeing here real? Because she's in the same hypnotic trance I am, right? So then we say, well, if we're all experiencing this, we have a consensus agreement on reality. It's real because we all agree we're seeing the same thing, right? No, we're all just hypnotized the same way. We're all conditioned to have the same beliefs about reality in terms of we all believe in time and space, don't we? Yeah. We all believe that this is real, that this is really happening, right? But if you get involved in the teachings and practices and you're practicing, you understand your relationship to your mind is your relationship to the movie. And if you don't know the difference between what's happening in your mind and reality, you will suffer everything that happens in your mind. So what are the practices? The practices are about being aware of the movie that's playing in my mind and be aware of the effect it has on me when I take it to be real. Yes? And if I know that it's not real, right, then what am I going to do to deal with the potential effect that movie's having on me?
Don't identify with the thinking.
Okay, well, yeah, so first of all, you have to know that you're not in the movie, right? So you can deal with the movie, right? And when you know you're not in the movie and you're dealing with the movie and the movie's getting crazy, right? Then you have to understand and experience that this is not real, therefore it need not be something that is affecting you. Now, in the mind, we're doing two things with these teachings and practices. One, we're calming it down, right? We're calming it down, right? Because it is the effect of the hypnosis, right? Thinking that everything that's happening is real, right? But it's not real, but the mind's just a program. The mind's like a projector running the movie. The projector running the movie in the movie theater can't determine whether the movie's real or not. It's just a projector running a movie, right? Same thing with the mind. The mind and the brain are just playing a program, just running the movie, right? So when the movie's playing and the movie and something's happening in the movie that has the potential to have a negative impact on you or negative effect on you, right? And you understand that the movie is appearing that way because of the conditioning that it had, right? Well, then what we can do is help the mind calm down, right? Because it's a dream. We're helping the mind dream its way out of being a dream, right? Helping the mind calm down. And then as the mind's calming down and it's having less of an effect on us, right? What we can do is train the mind to be consistent with what is real. And as we're training the mind to be consistent with what is real, we're training the mind to be related to things as they are. The reason the suffering happens is because we have an idea that things shouldn't be happening that are happening. We don't suffer that when we're in the movies, do you? When you're watching a movie, you don't say, oh, that shouldn't be happening on the screen. No, you surrender to what's happening on the screen. You allow that to happen, right? So it can be seen as entertainment instead of tragedy or upset, right? The same thing is true with training the mind. Through training the mind over time, we can gradually have the programming in the mind be consistent with what is real. And when it's consistent with what is real, it stops going through all of these machinations of being upset and distressed and afraid and angry and all the rest of it that goes on there that we identify ourselves with. Well, it's not that you're helpless, it's that you're powerful enough to actually see through the illusion. That's not helpless. You have the power to see an illusion as an illusion. You have the power to see a dream as a dream. You have the power to see a movie as a movie. That's not helpless. If you don't know that, you're helpless. If you don't know that, then you're helplessly in the dream. You're helplessly in the movie, right? And then you just suffer and you do your best to avoid the suffering and try and control what's happening. These concepts are challenging, right? That's why we're using analogies and metaphors and so forth. But it's worth the trouble. It's worth the trouble to listen to these teachings and give yourself the opportunity to digest these concepts. You know, to get clear about what these concepts are pointing to, because what these concepts are pointing to is a way out of suffering. They're pointing to a way out of suffering by allowing yourself to wake up and see things as they are.